What's up, friend? Graham here from recordingrevolution.com. And today we have to ask the question, are mixing engineers overrated? And yes, I'm talking about your favorite famous mix engineers. Maybe it's Andrew Sheps or Chris Lord-Alge or Jakir King or Andy Wallace. Are these guys and gals overrated, or are they really as amazing as they seem to be? Do they deserve our worship? And whoa, I use that word intentionally because that's what we do. Just look around YouTube, look around this place that you're watching this on. You look at YouTube, and what do you see in our audio space? You see a crap ton of mixing tutorials, mixing. And then you see a lot of people talking about certain mix engineers that we all revere, myself included. And I have conversations with many of you, and all I hear from many of you is, I want to mix like so-and-so, and I want to learn so-and-so's trick. And man, if I had the money, I would have so-and-so mix my record. And to me, it's like, whoa, pump the brakes. We need to have a conversation because I personally think there's a case to be made that these mix engineers are overrated. Now, before you get angry at me, and you can disagree with me in the comments below, I'm totally cool with that. Know that most of these people are my friends. I really like these people, have worked closely with some of them, and I'm hoping to work with others, and have a ton of respect for what they do. So don't hear me say that I'm taking away from them as if they are not good. Hello, they are as good as advertised. What I'm coming down against is our collective worship and leveling and promoting of these mix engineers, because there's a problem that creates. Let's dive into the case for why they're overrated, and then I'll share some thoughts at the end of why they're not overrated. Now, let's think about this for a second. There's a reason why we like these mix engineers, because their records sound good. And I want my records to sound as good as the records they work on. I mentioned Andy Wallace a minute ago. The guy rarely does any interviews. So the moment one comes out, I want to read everything he has to say because he mixed Nirvana's Nevermind. So yes, we need to learn from mix engineers. In fact, I think the beauty of living in the internet age is that we can apprentice and intern from anyone we want from afar. So if you like Chris Lord-Alge's mixes, and you'd be in good company if you do, then you can listen to his interviews, you can watch tutorials that he's done, see what knobs he turns on what compressors, and then you can go turn those same knobs on those same compressors, because that's what apprenticeship is. You copy exactly what the master you're learning from does in the early days to be acquainted with his or her method, and then you make it your own over time. That's how Chris Lord-Alge learned from his mentor, Bob Clearmountain. You copy, and then it becomes your own, because guess what? We all hear music slightly differently. So we'll never quite be a carbon copy of someone else. We're going to interpret music a little bit differently. So don't hear me say I don't like to learn from other mixers. I do it all the time. I sometimes interview some of these people on my channel so I can learn from them. I am a fan of learning from the best. But there's 3 reasons why I think mixing engineers, especially these famous ones, are a little overrated, and we're putting too much emphasis on them and holding them in a little too high esteem. Number 1, they're mixing tracks that sound really good to start with. Have you ever thought about that? Right? Like when Chris Lord-Alge mixes a Green Day record, that record comes to him sounding freaking amazing. Because A, it's Green Day, B, it's been produced professionally, and C, it's been recorded by an amazing recording engineer in a great studio with good gear, with people who know what they're doing. So when Chris gets the tracks, they sound amazing. You and I, on the other hand, if we're newer to recording and mixing, guess what? Our raw recordings don't sound so great. And that's just because we're new. We haven't gotten great at the art of recording. So when it comes time to mix, and we're grabbing plugins and we're turning knobs, guess what? Mixing a crappy recording is really hard. It'd be hard for anyone, especially for a newbie if that's where you are. So you're already at a disadvantage when you're trying to mix your own crappy recordings. If you and I were given the same raw tracks that your favorite mix engineers were given, chances are high that we'd be able to get a much better sounding mix of those tracks than we could of our own tracks. Maybe it wouldn't be as good as Chris Lord-Alge and Andrew Sheps and Shakir King and Andy Wallace and Dave Pensato, but it would sure be better than our mixes of our own crap, which just goes to show that they're starting from a much better place than where we're starting from, which makes you ask the question, why don't we put as much emphasis on getting better at recording? Shouldn't we focus on getting better recordings in the first place so then the mixing becomes a breeze? Because honestly, mixing is relatively simple. And if you're new to mixing or you're unsure of that and you've made mixing too complex, I want to give you something. I have a simple 8-step mixing checklist that you can download for free. Just go to mixingchecklist.com. And when you do, I'm going to throw in a free video module from one of my paid courses, Mixing University, called How to Mix Rock Vocals and Effects, absolutely free. And I'm going to give you a set of multi-tracks you can download so you can, guess what, practice mixing on. And I want to give you one other video called Mixing and Mastering Explained so you can understand the differences between mixing and mastering, because a lot of times people get those confused. So if you want my simple 8-step mixing checklist so you can, hey, guess what, get better at mixing and a whole bunch of other goodies, go ahead and download it for free at mixingchecklist.com. Okay, second reason I think these mix engineers are overrated or we hold them in too high esteem is because, guess what? They're famous because the people they're mixing are famous, right? Their clientele are the biggest artists of our day. We are familiar with those bands. So if you love a band or you love an artist or you love a singer or whatever it is, because we're audio nerds, we don't just enjoy the music as musicians, we enjoy it on a whole nother deeper level, which is pretty cool. We love it sonically. We love the sounds, and we want to look up who produced it, who recorded it. But more times often than not in this era, we want to know who mixed it. And so we find out, oh my gosh, this was mixed by Andrew Sheps, or oh my gosh, this was mixed by Dave Pensato, or whoever it is, right? And so then we attach ourselves to these mix engineers because we think, wow, I love this song. This is a famous band, and this person mixed them. They've got to be good. And these are two true but separate things. Famous band that's good, really good mix engineer, but the connection there gets blurred a lot of times, and we think, oh, they're amazing because they mixed this person. But that's really how we know them, is because they mixed this person. I have a ton of students and friends who are phenomenal mixing engineers. You might be one of them. I've interacted with so many of you over the last decade, and your work is phenomenal. But a lot of these people that I've interacted with who I think are amazing mixers, you would never know their clientele. You would never have heard of any of the bands they've worked with. And so we don't talk about them. They're not on YouTube being worshiped by all of us because we don't know who they are, because guess what? The bands they're working on, we don't know, which makes you wonder, why do we worship the mix engineers we do? Is it because we're familiar with the bands they produced and therefore do they deserve our worship? I don't know. I think they deserve a lot of accolades because they're just good, but we hold them to a whole nother level because of who they've mixed. And third and final reason why I think mixing engineers, especially the famous ones, are a little overrated in our community, as it were, is because mixing is not as important as so many other things. Think about it. What is more important than mixing? Do you know? Do you know? Do you know? I'll give you 4. Songwriting, arranging, recording, performing. Those 4 things are way more important than mixing, hands down. If you have a crappy written song, it doesn't matter who mixes it, it's a bad song. If you have a poorly arranged song, gosh, mix engineers feel like their hands are tied when they're given a bad arrangement. There's not much you can do to make that song exciting if the arrangement falls flat. If you have a poorly recorded song, which we already talked about, then we know you can only polish a turd but so much. You know, there's turds and there's polished turds, but then why do we even want turds? Can't we have something better than a turd? And 4, and one that I think we miss in this home recording world, and I'm guilty of this as much as the next person, is we can't create a performance after the fact in the mix. Performing is the most original piece of all of these puzzles that we have. Recording never always used to exist, and songwriting and arranging isn't necessary if someone's already written and arranged a good song, but performing that song, like we elevate covers or even just straight up redone performances of the exact same arrangement of a famous song. We elevate them if the performance is impeccable. If you hear someone redoing a Michael Jackson song and their performance is like just as good as MJ's or better, even if the arrangement's not that much more creative, you can still go, whoa, that girl can sing or that guy can sing. Performance is the most original thing, period. So we overlook performance and we're like, just get it captured, get it recorded. We can tune it, we can compress it, we can add effects to it later. And what we get is this beautifully mixed, soulless, lifeless performance that, guess what? It doesn't connect with the average listener. Your mom, your brother, your friends, the general public, they don't care about mixing. What they care about is a song they like, with lyrics they connect to, with a performance that they can buy into. And the recording and the mixing help accentuate that and make sure that nothing gets in the way and it sounds professional enough. But man, those things are secondary and hidden to the general public. It's the performance and the song and the lyrics of that song that people really connect with. So again, those things are way more important than the mixing, which means why are we putting so much emphasis on the mix engineers and not enough emphasis on the songwriters, on the producers, on the recording engineers, or guess what? On the actual performers, the artists themselves. Why don't we have enough videos on YouTube about how to perform better? Why aren't we focusing on performing? Why aren't we perfecting our craft of singing or playing or whatever it is? That's going to lead to a better sounding song in the end than just focusing on mixing. Now, again, as I said at the beginning, I am not hating on these mix engineers, nor am I trying to take away from anything they do. I have spent time, I have spent money, and I have spent effort trying to learn from a lot of these people I listed on today's video. Why? Because they're better than me, because I want to be as good as them, because I love learning from anybody and everybody whose work I respect. Because guess what? They do great work. This conversation takes nothing away from who they are. I'm talking more to us as a community that overvalues mixing and mix engineers in particular and obsesses with and worships these people and says, oh, if only I could have so-and-so mix my song, it'd be amazing. You know what? Why don't you write a better song? Why don't you record a better song? Why don't you get better at performing? And then why don't you just learn a simple mix strategy that can make any great song that's well written and arranged and performed and recorded sound its best? Mixing at the end of the day can be, and I think should be, ultra simple and very quick if all the other elements are in place. But I want to know what you think. Two things. Leave me a comment below and let me know, do you disagree with me? And if so, sound off. Let us know why. I have no idea what I'm talking about. And if there's a favorite mix engineer that you have that I didn't list, please list him or her below so we can go look them up and check out what they're doing. But also, if you just want to get better at mixing, and this maybe encouraged you to say, hey, maybe mixing isn't this dark art that I thought it was, and it's important, but not as important as I was making it out to be, but I still want to get better at it, then download my mixing checklist. It's an 8-step checklist. It's a real easy read. I'm going to give you some free multi-tracks you can practice on. I'm going to give you 2 additional bonus videos on how to mix rock vocals and effects and mixing versus mastering explained, all for free at mixingchecklist.com. As always, thanks for watching. Thanks for liking and subscribing to the channel. Have a great day, and I'll see you on another video real soon.